Percentages, converting from fractions and decimals using number chips. This is a digital lesson, and this one is New Year's themed. So the lesson starts with explaining what a percentage is. It's a comparison out of 100. So 45% means 45 out of 100. And here's some basic conversions. So if we have 56 hundredths as a decimal, it's the same as 56 hundredths as a fraction, which is 56%, since we're comparing out of 100. 73 hundredths would be 73%, and so on. And then 1 whole would be 100%. So students are going to start on slide 3, and they're going to be moving these number chips into place to show the conversion from decimal to percentage. Now these are all pretty simple. This is a good slide for practicing moving the number chips. Now every slide has every number the students need. So if they get to the end of a slide and the numbers aren't working, they know they've made an error somewhere and they need to go back and check. So here we have 12 hundredths, would be 12%, 59 hundredths, 59%, and so on, and then 1 whole would be 100%. Now the next slide shows a way to convert from a decimal to a percentage by moving that decimal point 2 places to the right. So 62 hundredths, if we move that decimal point 2 places to the right, we get 62%. Here 59%. Here's an example where we have a whole number. So this would be 174% if we move that decimal point. And then here, if we have to move the decimal point 2 places and there's no number here, we're just going to add a 0. So that's 30%, not 3%. So the next slide, students are going to be doing that. They have to be careful here. They're moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this one would be 65%, and this one 6 5/10%. This one we have to add a 0, so it would be 70%. This one would be 7%, and so on. Now we're going to look at fractions. If we have a fraction here, one method to change it to a percentage is to convert it to an equivalent fraction with 100 in the denominator. So here, if we multiply the numerator and denominator by 5, we get an equivalent fraction of 45 hundredths. Then we can change it to a decimal and to a percentage. So the next slide, that's what students are going to be doing. So they want to convert that denominator to 100. We know that we have to multiply by 5. So if we multiply the numerator by 5, we have to multiply the denominator by 5. And we get 30 hundredths. We can change that to the decimal, 30 hundredths. And then to the percentage, which would be 30%. Same thing on the next one. We change it to an equivalent fraction with 100 in the denominator. And they're going to be doing that on the next 2 slides. They just have to convert that denominator to 100. And then when we get to slide 10, we can see that we can't always directly convert that fraction to 100 in the denominator. In this case, we have to simplify first. So if we simplify 1840, this is by dividing numerator and denominator by 2, we get 9/20. And now we can convert it to 100 by multiplying numerator and denominator by 5, and we get 45%. Here again, we have to simplify. So they're going to be doing that on the next 2 slides. Simplify first. On this one, we're just going to divide the numerator and denominator by 3, and we get 2/5. Now we want to convert that to 100 by multiplying numerator and denominator by 20, and we get 40 hundredths, and then they can convert it to a decimal and a percentage. Same thing on the next slide, simplifying first. Now there are some cases where we can't convert fractions to equivalent fractions with 100 in the denominator. In that case, we have to use long division. So here's an example of how we can convert 5/8 to a percentage. We're just going to take 5 and divide by 8. because fractions are just division. And we get 625 thousandths. If we move the decimal point 2 places to the right, we get 62.5%. So the next slide, most of the division is done for them. They have 1/8, which is 1 divided by 8. They just have to move the number chips to show that division. So when they get their answer, they have a movable decimal point, and they just have to move that decimal point into the correct place in their percentage. And then the final slide, they have to do all of the division themselves, as well as move that decimal point into the correct place in their answer. And they get a little nice work at the end. So this is a digital lesson, Percentages, Converting from Fractions and Decimals, the New Year's version.